Welcome to a Better Late Than Never life update email number 87, I think. Picking up from where last life update email left off. Wow, off to a bad start. Okay. I did a call concerning cancer stuff in the morning, read a bit, and then went to go to my PET scan, which I was 0% nervous about because I was quite confident I knew the results. However, upon actually getting the results, I was absolutely flabbergasted to see my cancer has decreased in size by a third. I basically just looked up and I was like, "You're cheeky, aren't you?" Chuckles. "All right, fine, have it your way. My bad for assuming I knew what was going on here, but I won't complain." I don't know why Alex is British today, but he is. I then got absolutely decimated by Benj in racquetball, but lol, who cares? My cancer has decreased by a third. XD, sorry Benj, genuinely do not care. You whipped the floor with me. So yeah, 'twas fun. I then came back to the house and told Grace, Emerson, and Nessa, who were hanging around, I waited to tell them till after the racquetball game, because I knew if I had told them before, they wouldn't have let me play. And then we got celebratory canes and did a celebratory fast drive in Benj's car, which was big fun. Alex was indeed giggling the whole entire time. Once we got back, I began the era of Baldur's Gate. I know, I'm sorry, okay? I got hardcore addicted to video games for like a week and a half, so over the next paragraphs, you'll note the extent of that addiction, but the good news is I got over it, and it only took me, check Steam, 69 hours. You know what? Don't worry about it. Past Alex. I'm Alex 3.1 now? Maybe 3.01. XD. Yep, post Baldur's Gate edition, Alex 3.01. Anyway, I did make some time out of my video game packed schedule, I know, so mature of me, XD, to watch anime with Grace before going to bed. The next morning consisted of time-consuming communication. I then did something quite atypical, namely, I hung out with Dylan. See, and I do mean way, XD, back, Dylan and I agreed to hang out to do some lifting, but since I was expecting to be fasting and starting chemo the next day, I told him, yeah, can't really lift, but we could hang anyway. So I took him to the senior center where we played some pool. I think I won all 5 games, XD, and then chilled in the hot tub. Honestly, pretty good time. During that time, I realized my previous dislike of Dylan largely stemmed from his mannerisms and not essence, and I, too quickly, conflated the two, XD. So it was honestly a decent time. Once we wrapped that up, I gamed for 3 hours, then hung out with John, where he elated at my newfound possession of a gaming computer. Tried to get me to play this game called Helldivers, but it actually took forever to download, so we got in like 1 round. Plus, I didn't like the game that much, so largely a bust of a hangout, but I did get to watch some anime with Grace when I got home. The next morning began with some reading, then Mom and I went to a Little Bird and talked about what she discovered from reading through my binders, if you recall those, and it was fairly interesting. Mom has a really good memory for detail, SI Dom perks, so it was encouraging to know I was quite accurate in my recollection of events. Though, honestly, it makes sense my memories were accurate because you have to understand memories aren't fixed. They are literally new neural connections whenever they're revisited. They've found you can actually block the re-encoding of a memory after it's recalled by blocking a particular protein, and it actually causes selective memory loss, so that's intriguing. Hence, I feel like the 2 ways to have accurate memories are have SI in your stack, and thus have a high fidelity to noticing the past as it actually is, or 2, never remember anything. I obviously took the second route, XD, because I never like to think about my past, and lol, certainly didn't before I wrote all my memories down. They stayed in pristine condition, so take that SI DOMs, I can do it too. Does this mean my memories are basically useless and I never learn from my past mistakes? Maybe, but I do remember things from my childhood accurately. You better believe it. Obviously, there were other interesting revelations from said conversation with Mom, but that was the fun one, XD. Once I got back from that, I played Baldur's Gate, played more Baldur's Gate, and then I worked out, gamed some more, did Fawn Away with Grace, read, and then Jank came over on a whim, and me and him talked till 2 a.m. in the morning while doing a stare at a lunar eclipse. You can't spell, Alex. At work the next day, I actually worked and sealed letters for 3 hours. I then revised my previous life update and got it up to date, looked into a book publishing options, and then, once I got home, I gamed and read my quantum physics book. I've got to say, I now understand quantum physics pretty darn well, and it's fascinating. Just the worst, but fascinating. If you have any questions about the discipline, well, the theory of the discipline, I can probably explain. However, if you have questions about the math, heck no, go find someone else, XD. The next morning, I woke up unprecedentedly early, and so I decided to read my quantum physics book and, in the process, had the most massive brain revelation I've had in like a year. The universe opened up before me and the philosophy gods bestowed their favor, and I understood 7 things. I then scrambled to write down those 7 things in one of my characteristically uninterpretable jumble of thought docs before the excitingly spieling about the Brendan in half-coherent way, and then driving him and Caleb to go play airsoft. Here's a picture of us. The airsoft time was honestly one of my favorites. I think mostly because Caleb was there. That man has no restraint, and his hardcore energy really got me riled up. Can't be outdone by the SE Dom. Hence, me and him were just making crazy runs, literally driving into patches of cactus, using each other as meat shields, lol, a very painful tactical move, and it was tons of fun. Don't get me wrong, the cactus part sucked. Don't tell me you had to get another friend to pick cactuses out of yourself. Ugh. And after that round, we all took a 20-minute decactusing break. This is why we read ahead, folks. But it was totally worth it, and Caleb and my team won as a result of our heroism, so lol, it was great. Very good time. Once I got back home, I showered and then gamed before talking with Jordan. As I talked, I assembled my Vine bookshelf, still working on that project, and then at the very end of it all fell off the wall. Deeply vexing. It was holding but just barely, and I went to adjust something and it all came down. You have to understand, books are heavy, and command strips are meh at best. Hence, I got another method for keeping it attached, and I'm hoped that will work better. Once we finished catching up, I gamed some more, and as was becoming a fast tradition, watched anime with Grace before going to bed. The next morning, I had a church walk with Jake. Then Benj and I went on a drive, got Krispy Kreme donuts, and caught up. 'Twas big good. Once I got home, I gamed some, had the first really good convo with Joe in quite some time on a car drive, hung out with Emerson and Katie, gamed more, played Dutch Blitz with the aforementioned people, went on a lengthy blade where I basically just pulled Grace the whole time, and Emerson and Katie were slow. Lol, I miss SE people. DX. But it was still decent. We got back just in time for the last Wade financial call, and then parted ways with the Grace gang, gamed a bit before then calling William and telling him my massive brain revelation, which he was like, wow, that is big brain, and lol, I'm just glad he understood it, because, thus far, he's one of like 3 XD. I want to know this revelation, although I probably won't understand it. Anyway, the next morning was more quantum physics reading, which persisted for 3 hours. I then worked out, went on a drive with Emerson, played video games, and then, per St. Patrick's Day, Brayden and I decided to hit up the bars, because lol, never done that before. Hence, we got pizza first. That is a big pizza. And it turns out I slightly overestimated our consumption capacity, but thankfully John happened to be free and decided to join us, and hence was able to eat the pizza we couldn't. So the 3 of us hit up the bars, while novel, it was kind of meh. Like, nothing really happened. We didn't talk to anyone outside of ourselves, and I at least didn't drink enough to feel anything, so yeah, a bit lackluster. Still glad I tried it once. Once I got back home, I gamed and then tried to help Taylor and Grace sort through the conflict that seethes within them. The next morning, I read quantum physics and then alternated between doing that and playing Baldur's Gate for like 8 hours. See, the trouble is, I was determined to complete all of the game in one run, and with no party, so when I died, I had to restart completely. Hence, I didn't actually end up getting that far. And more often than not, I was just replaying what I had already played, XD. My addiction to self-limitation and the hardest possible difficulty is a slight problem. I then played racquetball with Benj and lost, all but the final game, but then what happened afterward was very odd. My throat didn't start to close, per se, but I felt like something was caught there. It was actually extremely painful and wouldn't go away. I felt like someone was gripping my neck. Very unpleasant. Hence, I felt pretty bad, delayed my talk with Johanna for a time, but then I was like, screw it, and we drove off into the night. It was actually a very good talk. Glad I pushed through, but still my throat didn't get much better. Once that wrapped up, I started over in my game once again, and then went to bed, where I had quantum physics D&D dreams. Oh gosh. I explicitly remember using my bonus action to study Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, so that I could still have a fast arrow with a lot of momentum and it go where I wanted. XD, granted, it doesn't make total sense, but for dream logic, it makes a lot of sense, XD. In the morning, I felt remarkably better, which was quite surprising, because I felt trash in the night. I then did more Baldur's Gate and quantum physics until I got fed up with dying in stupid ways and having to restart each time, so I put the game aside for a hot sec. I then ate cinnamon rolls and watched anime with Grace. Grace gave me an oil head rub, which is not particularly pleasant nor unpleasant, and then I read more quantum physics and used my AI to try to help me find people who would publish my cancer book. The next morning, I felt basically normal, read my quantum physics book for an age, also took extensive notes when I was reading through it so I could revisit everything in case I forget or cease to understand in the future. I then looked into changing my career to be a counselor instead of an engineer, but proceeded to discover that, that requires 2 more years of school than a normal degree, and hence was like, nope, engineering we stay. I then played more Baldur's Gate, talked with Grace and Taylor, went on a run, read more, did Fuanime, spontaneously assisted Caleb in moving couches, read once I got back, played cards with Grace and Emerson at Alleycat, drove fast and listened to good music, ate popcorn and watched anime, showed Emerson my AMVs of old, and then called it a night. As the sun rose, nothing happened. Emerson and Katie were over for a bit, and I just listened to them ramble in classic NE fashion. Then Sydney called as I participated in my Baldur's Gate addiction, and we talked for a bit before Neo eventually got roped onto said call, and then him and I talked. Once that wrapped up, I worked out, my shoulder started to really hurt, and then I started doing some reading, but got sucked back into playing Baldur's Gate. I know, it's an addiction. However, I could not engage in my soul-sucking virtual world for long because I had a scheduled talk with Noah and Alan to discuss my genius philosophy revelations. Thus, I mounted the Phoenix, drove to Noah's house where I found Alan, and the 3 of us journeyed into the heart of Loveland, where we got copious amounts of pizza and had a very, very nerdy conversation. People were looking at us XD. It was great, except for the fact that TI Doms are way too caught up on the minutia. I don't know. And I got annoyed. XD. But aside from that, I had this genius moment where I came up with this original paradox on the spot that was actually so big brain. Got to sip alcohol while spewing intellectual words and just generally greatly enjoyed myself. See, because of the vast majority of you are plebeians and you don't understand the revived pleasures of being an intellectual, the thoughtful smolder you face your face naturally inclines to as you puff a pipe, the sense of overwhelming superiority you feel as you turn up your nose and look down on the common man, and most importantly, the overwhelming ecstasy of an idea all coming together. The last one is actually real. To muse on the fired no things of life. I see why the great philosophers claim that the best pleasures are not pleasures at all when compared to the joys of understanding the forms. Who needs drugs when you're thinking about the quantization of space and resulting esoteric nature of the immuability we all indwell? What? Anywho, that's all to say. Big thunk. Me happy. Once I got home, I played Baldur's Gate and slept. The next day, Church Jake and I came upon brilliant realizations and figured out how to effectively communicate across TI and TE. We're actually so smart and lucky. The next day I did a good social, Fuanimade, played table tennis with Benj, which was a nice change of pace and of course very fun. And then it was time for Pretzels with Nessa, the part of the show where Nessa sings a silly song. I will not be doing that. JK. Just had to stress you out there, Nessa. XD, you need not sing any silly songs. Good, I wouldn't have. But no, 'twas a grand old time. We all gathered the appropriate materials, and Nessa showed me how to make amazing soft pretzels. Very, very tasty. And we all, consisting of Emerson, Katie, Grace, Benj, Karina, Seth, Lily, Johanna, and Sam, made many a pretzel of many a flavor. I would like to say that I made most of the pretzels. Anyway, I had a great time and very much enjoyed myself. And the 8 pretzels that I ate, XD. After that, I went on a short drive with the Grace gang, read some, went on a brief Wendy run where my frosty soul was dark. Read more, drove Emerson home, and then did Fuanime with Grace before going to bed. The next day at work, I finished yet another cancer book, did small stuff and played Baldur's Gate in the interim between work and Monday night. Did Monday night, helped facilitate a Grace and Taylor talk as I played Baldur's Gate, and then got serious and actually helped them communicate once my distracted attempts were failing. XD. The morning thereafter, I did small stuff like install my air conditioner for the summer and attended class, which was actually pretty interesting for once. He covered the existential philosophers, cause it's a rhetoric class. I don't know, this guy is probably an ENTP, so lol, his curriculum makes as much sense as any connection. But it was actually really interesting because I've avoided learning about those guys like the plague. So for once in my life, I learned something in class. Anyway, yes, 'twas pleasant. Thereafter, I read more, worked, read more, read more, Faunamade, and then decided to spontaneously blade 13 miles like the days of old, in which here was my route. Grace and Emerson were kind enough to pick me up, so that's why it stops abruptly. Also, there was a beautiful sunset, and I remembered why I like going on these solo blading trips. Ooh, that is very pretty. Also, completely unrated, but Esther made me art. Gaze. Gazing. Okay, enough gaze. Anti-gaze. I then started watching Anahoa with Grace and Emerson, but Grace dipped to call Taylor. Then, I don't know why, but I got so sad, so I took us all on a sad drive, and we drove to places we had never yet driven before. And while Grace and I gradually became happy, it would seem my sadness passed on to Emerson, who then proceeded to be sad. But by utilitarian calculus, that's a permissible outcome, so XD. Once Grace and I got back, we watched an episode of Alkine Sailor Uniform as we ate Tim Tams and milk, and it was good. The following morn began with me calling Becky Dawson. I then napped. Then I called with Molly Miller and napped again. And then I went to Niam's house where we bought groceries, Faunamade, and they played Baldar's Gate Coop, which is in fact a good experience because Baldar's Gate addiction. Once I got home, I read, went on a drive with Emerson, and then slept. The next day, I awoke to attend class, did small stuff, and studied cancer in the gap between it and work. I actually did homework for once, Faunamade again, got home, finished another book, played some video games, and then hung with Katie, Grace, and Emerson till like 1 a.m. But I must note that this hangout was exceptional, because for some reason, probably as inexplicable as Bernoullian motion, Katie's tertiary TE was activated, so we had a ton of good TE conversations, while I learned absolutely nothing. I enjoyed the mini debates, and it was also just fun teaching her stuff. I like TE, Katie. She's fun. William, your choice of girlfriend makes a little more sense. You're still crazy and seduced, but now I understand just a little bit of how you made your mistake. No offense, Charlotte. I realize how dumb that sounds after I literally just called you a mistake. But you know what? I stand by it. You're an absolutely lovely and fascinating human, and simultaneously a so-so personality romantic matchup with an ENTJ. And I say all of that with no offense intended. So I say it again, no offense, Charlotte. Now, instead of redacting my words, we just hope they're never read by the person in question. Not sure if you noticed, but my life updates are always very unadulterated stream of consciousness for me, and I feel it would be ingenuine, inferior FI, to change that now. So it stays. My TE is fully aware of the consequences of it staying, but my little FI is louder, so it stays. Mostly because my TE estimates the odds of Charlotte reading this are less than 15%. We take those odds. So, yes. Katie, philosophy, we laughed, we cried. Emerson violently attacked me. Life is good. The next day I did work. Then I picked up Five Guys for John and I. We ate it. We got Krispy Kreme donuts. We ate them. Then we had the deepest talk where I was actually vulnerable and felt mega exhausted afterwards and pseudo-regretted my life choices. But luckily there was a way to rejuvenate me at hand. Intellectual warfare. See, Benj is better than me at far too many things. I dislike this fact because I have an obsession with being the best. Does this make sense so far? Hence, since I keep stinking losing to him at racquetball, I decided we would fight with our minds, and we both took an IQ test and got the literal exact same score. So yeah, I was rejuvenated, but my superiority complex no more reestablished. But it was fun. Not sure it was an actually legit IQ test, though. I mean, they say it's legit, but I'm, skeptical, just because everyone got in the 90th percentile that took it from my friend pool. Regardless, did that, watched Anahoa with Emerson, as Grace called Taylor. I knew she would love this anime. Talked with Grace amidst the rain smell on my front porch after Emerson left, and that was a great convo. And then she kindly spent an hour massaging my shoulders because they had been mega hurting. And we went to bed. The next morning, I slept in. Grace's massage helped with my shoulder pain significantly, but I still needed pain meds. I then journaled some, napped, rode my electric scooter over to Lima, where Sydney and I conversed clad in capes. Insert picture of Alex looking slightly dorky. It was an okay conversation, but this person Sydney despises from some past church experience was sitting right next to us the whole time, so lol, that hindered conversation somewhat. From there, Neo, Sydney, and I carpooled to Panera, where I ate 2 bread bowls, and we met up with John and his fiancée and had some tolerable conversation, sorry. We then stood in the rain waiting to get into this medieval cage fight event for an hour, and oddly, I felt the conversation and under those conditions were more enjoyable, XD. But yes, we finally made it in, and let me do a brief explanation. See, back in the day, when we went to the Ren Fair, we saw these men in full armor, wailing on each other with real weapons, and it was great. Hence, when John learned that the same group was putting on another fight in Aggie Theater downtown, he was like, "Arise!" and summoned up. But this time, it was much less great. First, pictures. I'm trying to record with Benj next to me. It's not going well. The first The first picture is deceptive because since I was on the railing, it implies one could see the stage. However, upon being kicked off the railing by the evil staff, the much more cute reality was half the time I saw medieval fighting at a distance, and the other half I saw the back of people's heads. So, yeah, it kind of sucked in the end. The first time we watched these guys fight at the Ren Fair was good because you were right there, and you would see the sparks fly and hear the impact of weapons on armor. But in this one, it was way too loud and far away to have any such experience. And again, you had to try and glimpse the action through a sea of people on functionally flat ground. So yeah, I did not enjoy it. Had good potential as an event, but it was an actual dud. I then spent a brief amount of time at the Bowens before Jake and his brother Jordan came and picked me up. And then, after a brief stop at home to grab my magic stuff, took us back to Jake's, where the two of them, me and Joe, all had really good Commander games. We were all quite evenly matched, so that was fun. I got home from that, and Grace and I watched anime and ate snacks until 2 before calling it a night. Unfortunately, the following night, I got very scant sleep because of shoulder pain, plus now my chest was hurting when I breathed and my arms kept falling asleep, and it was becoming a whole mess. Hence, I did not sleep most of the night, and Grace woke me up later, assuming I had been well rested when I wasn't. Hence, that made me kind of grumpy. Me and her then went on a drive since I was groggy and not up for much more than sitting in a car, and she really wanted me to come. However, we went up this side road, and Grace almost got us stuck in the mountains because of mud. I didn't say anything because I wanted her to exercise her own judgment and realize it was a bad idea. But once it got a pretty sketch, I stepped in and was luckily able to back us up the mud hill at high speeds. Kind of a stressful experience, not gonna lie, because I was fairly sure we would be super stuck, but huzzah, that we weren't. And hopefully Grace learned to be more cautious. However, I will say it was a very pretty drive. Once I got back, we were defragged by just watching some solo leveling until the Macy's came over, and that was mostly good until I started talking about my psychological personal development stuff, which is still very much a vulnerable topic for me, and I felt absolutely grilled. So that was 100% a mistake, and I realized that I may not be as resilient as I anticipated, and maybe being this honest at this point was a mistake. But regardless, we planned bowling afterwards, so I had not choice but to attend and try to pretend I wasn't hurt the whole time. Oh, poor Alex. But I definitely was, and just wanted it to end. After that, Emerson came over, and she and Grace tried to cheer me up, and it worked a bit, but I really needed the car ride by myself afterward to become a functional human again. Hence, I did that, and I felt leagues better when I returned. And hence, I was able to do some productive song searching and also watch an episode of Anohana with the two of them. Oh, and Grace gave me another shoulder massage given last night's events in hopes I would sleep better. On Monday, I was starting to realize that whatever was assaulting me probably wasn't going to get better on my own. And also taking 400 milligrams of Advil every night just to get to sleep wasn't exactly sustainable. Hence, at work, I started seriously researching solutions and trying to get some things on the books to see if they would help. I also continued working through the diet book I was reading. I decided once I got back from work that despite my shoulder, I would try running because I have really needed to get some exercise in, so I did that. I then did FlowTube at home before journeying to Monday night and beating Micah in Brawl. Evil laughter, playing some Magic and then listening to a sermon Joel Bartram sent me on the drive home. My developed capacity for listening to all things at least 3 times speed is perfect comprehension is one of my best decisions. Katie, your wisdom is now apparent to me, but also listening to music at anything other than normal speed is still infinitely dumb, and I think your wisdom expired in that case. Like, seriously, who listens to music at 2 times speed? Like, that defeats the point of music. I'm all for TE efficiency, but let's be rational here, okay? XD. Anyway, Joel was trying to get me to like this Ellerslie guy. What's his face? And my verdict is Like, he was perfectly average. I learned nothing. But nothing seemed sketchy either. So yeah, kind of my generic verdict on most sermons, honestly. XD. Once I got home, I fauna-made with Grace, and then that was it. I experienced much pain in the night and popped some pills to survive. Had school the next day, went to work, played some great racquetball with Benj, and then Mom and I went to the whiskey still for a catch-up, and that was big good. Both because of the conversation and the burger. XD. Once that ended, I went on a pretty significant drive with Emerson and then crashed once I got home. The next night, even pain meds didn't save me and I got absolute garbage sleep. Hence, I canceled everything I had going on that day and just kind of died, alternating between playing Baldur's Gate and napping. I literally did nothing else. I went to sleep early. Except I did not sleep at all. Like, actually 0 sleep occurred in the 12 hours I lay in bed that night. I had moved my bed out of my room, because I was thinking maybe something toxic in the air was causing these symptoms, but it turned out to be definitely caused by me lying down. And yeah, the big reason I actually got no sleep was because I decided to see how I did without any pain meds, and my answer was poorly. Very, very poorly. The whole night mega sucked, and I was just in way too much pain, and I only stuck it out because I wanted to be able to accurately present my symptoms to the doctor the next morning. But yeah, just the worst. At this point, I thought I knew the cause, namely my artery was finally being squished by cancer. My symptoms matched up with what you would expect from SVC syndrome quite well. So I messaged my 2 oncologists, and they were both like, yep, that's probably what's happening. So after visiting a general practitioner doctor who was impressively useless, I then was commanded to visit the ER on pain of the office lady wrath. Okay. Hence, the next 4 hours were spent by me in bed, mega sleep deprived, and hooked up to at least 7 wires as I waited for the CT scan to see if my vein was indeed collapsing. Normally, I would have been very bored, but I was just so tired that time flowed strangely, and so it didn't feel that agonizingly long. Anyway, eventually they were finally able to do a CT scan. It turned out my vein was not collapsing, though my cancer had grown significantly. Hence, after another hour lag, eventually they were just like, well, you're not dying right now, so go home. Hence, I went home with no more clue about what was causing my nightly death, nor any meditating prescriptions to actually help me sleep. So yes, we love you, ER. Just the best. Jazz hands. I feel like this summarizes every experience I've had in the ER ever. They make you wait for 10 bazillion years, test to see if your heart is failing, and then are like, well, your hearts are not failing. You have multiple hearts, apparently. Your hearts are not failing, so you must be fine. Because the only thing that can go wrong in the human body can be measured by an EKG or CT scan. Go home and stop pretending like there's something actually wrong with you. I definitely hate doctors more than mechanics these days, but don't get me wrong, I still hate mechanics. It's just the difference is doctors and mechanics that work on your body instead of some machines. So when they make a mistake, you're like, my guy, you're literally killing me. Well, when a mechanic makes a mistake on a car, you're like, my guy, this is extremely financially vexing. Death is more annoying to me than poorness, hence my priority of hate. Anyway, I didn't get out of the ER in time to make it to work, so I called in. But I did make it out in time to get a full body integrative massage I scheduled as a Hail Mary. It was honestly a fantastic experience, and I'm very glad I did it, but I'm not sure it fundamentally fixed anything. I don't know, my pain continued afterwards, but maybe that was to be expected. Regardless, it was deeply painful and then deeply relaxing. So I say overall a good decision. 0 regrets. Once I got home, I did some Fuaname with Grace and then went to bed early in hopes of regaining the sleep I had lost. And thankfully, with the help of many pain meds, I did. The difference between living life actually sleepless and well-rested is very stark. I felt that starkness upon waking. I felt so much better overall. I went into work, talked with my female ESTJ coworker for half an hour. ESTJs, oh my gosh, I can't talk. It would seem like to yap. This is my universal experience with ESTJs thus far. Female ESTJs seem to accentuate this feature of their personality. Hence, though part of me was like, this is pointless, and I want to read, I yapped back. Though I may not seem it, I am actually quite the accomplished yapper. And yeah, it was a decently enjoyable convo. She may invite me to play pickleball sometime here. To my real life, eventually she left, and I was able to actually do work on cancer research. Once I got home, I did Fuaname, then attended the first Magic pre-release event in ages, which was decently fun. However, I only got 2 wins, and neither were pack rounds, so that was something of a bust. But the one plus side is that I did get to leave early, so lol. I had to hang with Katie, Emerson, and Grace before hitting the sack. I slept in the next morning because pain woke me up in the night, and then hung up with Caleb Christian, and we did have a pretty good conversation over some pool and table tennis games. He left-handed, of course. Once that wrapped up, I did Fuaname, made pillboxes again for the first time in ages, and listened to Personality Hacker as I did. I then got a message from Ty Lawless, of all people, asking if I would be down to play some spontaneous racquetball, and man, those were close games. We literally only got through 3 in a full hour and a half, but I did end up winning overall with a ratio of 2-1, although every win was by 5 points or less for each of us, so the games were way closer than Benj and mine. So yeah, that was super fun, but also quite close. Afterward, Ty confronted me about why I leave with Jake during the sermon sometimes, and we actually had a really good convo about that. I was then roped into joining Grace and Emerson and their co-worker Drew at Alley Cat because I am male, and they didn't want him to feel awkward with hanging out with girls. XD. He was boring, but chill. Turned out to be an ESFP. Grace and Emerson thought he might have been an ENTJ, which got me intrigued, but no, sadly, definitely ESFP. So yeah, that time was okay, but afterwards we did get to have a deep convo till like 1:30 in the morning, so if nothing else, it was worth it for that. Finally, as for yesterday, I attended church, but the lunch bunch was canceled, so upon Joe's request, I organized a meal at Matador, which had decent vibes. I then took a nap, talked with Amelia, which was okay, took another nap, watched some Nichijou with the Grays gang, and stretched, because I was still sore from racquetball, before joining Caleb for flag football at CSU. See, he's part of a nerd group that plays IM sports, so lol, they can use more athletic people, so he summoned me. The whack thing is flag football starts at literally 9:20, so way late, but still, it was actually really fun. I think I did meh, but still, I enjoyed myself, especially because the team was pretty bad, so there really wasn't any pressure to perform. So yeah, nice people, and I think I'm going to keep going to those. There we go. Once I got back, I was super sore. I played a bit of cards with the Grace gang, slurped pills, and had a good convo with Emerson, and then Grace and I finished the day with Fwaname. And as for today, I woke up with my left hamstring actually killing me. I almost fell when I got out of bed, because I tried to put weight on it, and I was like, heck no. I think my mistake was pushing myself so hard after being quite spent from my racquetball games with Ty. Regardless, I figured out a way to limp around today, and my job is just at a desk, so it worked out. And yeah, so far all I've done is work on this life update. So there you go. Welcome to the present. A pleasure to have you here, except it's definitely not the present because he sent this email to me like 2 weeks ago, and I just didn't record it. So my bad, guys. Okay. Bye. Enjoy.